Hey there, welcome back into Occupy Democrats. In this breaking story about Donald Trump, we have to focus on two very important words: cognitive dissonance. Now, the reality that Trump lives in, we all know, is just his own snow globe, but it is so very dangerous that it is adding to a global stage that's no longer ours. Donald Trump thinks it is, but in this breaking story, you're going to suddenly discover how fast people are scrambling from USS Trump. And I'm going to show that story to you in just a few seconds. And if you'd like Trump out of the White House, just subscribe to the channel. But we have to realize there are millions of Americans who actually believe that in today's world, we can still function as an isolationist country, and we cannot. And if you haven't seen why that's the case, just look back a couple of months with the farmers, soybeans, and China. When a power like China decides to go screw yourself, American farmers, what did they do? They didn't buy one soybean. And the ability for many Americans, including Donald Trump, our president, to believe that that doesn't show the level of cognitive dissonance of the world you're living in is beyond what I can possibly fathom, but that is what's going on. And in this breaking story, what Donald Trump is continuing to do on a foreign policy level is putting America in severe danger around the world. Take a quick listen and reminder of his position and world leaders' position on Ukraine and Russia. Here.
European leaders have rejected changes to international borders through the use of force, saying this would only reward Russian aggression. In a joint statement, 6 countries and the European Commission said they welcomed President Trump's initiative, but they said the path to peace cannot be decided without Ukraine.
Now be reminded from our number one ally, the UK, what they just recently said regarding Donald Trump, and not only his actions, but foreign policy. This.
I struggle to see Trump in any other way than a Putin apologist, and his sort of latest pronouncements confirm my view.
Yes, America cannot for the moment be seen as a trusted security ally.
And their action on that was to actually pull intelligence. Just stop for a moment. For those of you who are old enough to go all the way back to, I don't know, JFK and the Cuban Missile Crisis or anything just beyond that, imagine if one of our key allies across the pond actually did this.
CNN has learned the UK is no longer sharing intelligence with the U.S. about suspected drug trafficking in the Caribbean. Sources say the UK does not want to be complicit in U.S. military strikes on the vessels, believing the attacks, which have killed dozens in recent weeks, violate international law.
Well, in this breaking story, it's happening, and it's happening right now. Setting aside what Trump thinks of NATO and what NATO may or may not do in terms of a group of countries, look at what the Netherlands just did in terms of Trump's attack on Venezuela. This is a true breaking story and dangerous sign for the U.S. Check this story out.
Netherlands pulls out of U.S. Caribbean drug missions amid Venezuela tensions. Dutch defense forces traditionally work closely with the U.S., but are balking after U.S. attacks on suspected smuggling boats. The Netherlands has pulled out of U.S.-led counter-drug missions in the Caribbean, a reaction to the rising death toll from American military attacks on vessels suspected of being used to smuggle narcotics. Speaking Monday evening in Aruba, Defense Minister Ruben Brekelmans said Dutch forces would continue drug interdiction within Dutch territorial waters, but would not take part in U.S. operations on the high seas linked to Operation Southern Spear. The operation, launched in September, has killed more than 100 people in over 20 attacks on boats that the U.S. says were ferrying drugs. We have worked together with the Americans on counter-narcotics for many years, but in a different way, Brekelmans said. When we see drug smuggling, we try to arrest and prosecute those responsible, not by shooting ships. The move was first reported by the Dutch daily Trouw. The decision marks a break with past practice. For years, the Netherlands, which controls 6 islands in the Caribbean, cooperated closely with the United States and other partners in the region, including through the Joint Interagency Task Force South. Dutch Defense Forces and the Coast Guard worked with U.S. counterparts on surveillance, interdiction, arrests, and extraditions. What has changed, Brekelmans said, is the method adopted by the Donald Trump administration. Outside our territorial waters, we see that the Americans have now chosen a national route again, he said. The method and the operation the United States is carrying out now, they are really doing that themselves. We are not participating in that. The move comes amid heightened tensions after the United States used military force to detain Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro and escalate pressure on Caracas, prompting international criticism over violations of sovereignty and international law. Breckelman said Dutch defense planners were closely watching developments between Washington and Caracas, but stressed there is currently no military threat from Venezuela toward the Dutch Caribbean islands. We must always be prepared for different scenarios, he said, noting that rising tensions can affect airspace and regional stability. But you also have to look realistically at what the actual threats are. Breckelman's made clear the Netherlands would not provide facilities, helicopters, or other support if requested for Southern Spear. If it is part of that operation, then that is not something we agree to, he said. For this operation, we are not making our facilities available. CNN reported in November that London had suspended some intelligence sharing with the United States after Washington began launching lethal strikes on boats in the Caribbean.
Yet another nation who gives us support in many ways. As much as Trump and many Americans like to believe we can just, I and I alone can solve it. No, we can't. And we haven't for decades and decades and decades. People like to think that somehow we won World War II by ourselves. Actually, we won World War II in part because of the Russians. Do your history lesson if you need to, but that's the case. We can't be isolationists, but Trump and millions of Americans and MAGA folk believe that. It simply isn't true. And this kind of action by a benevolent country who's helping us out in a certain particular part of the region of the world, this is going to keep occurring. They're going to walk away. Thanks, Donald. Like and share the video. You guys stay frosty.